Thank you, Reb, I heard myself say in Yiddish. My mother is well. I was sitting in one of the chairs near the desk, but could not remember how I would got there. Asher Lev, the Reb said softly. I wanted to see you and to give you my blessings for your bat mitzvah. Thank you, Reb. Asher, the Reb said. How are you feeling? I am very well, Reb. I remember when you were born. I remember your brie. I was quiet. You will become a bar mitzvah this Shabbat. Yes, Reb. He looked at me. I remember your father's father. I bless you in the name of your grandfather. May you have a life of Torah and commandments. Thank you, Reb. Asher? Yes, Reb? A life should be lived for the sake of heaven. One man is not better than another because he is a doctor, while the other is a shoemaker. One man is not better than another because he is a lawyer, while the other is a painter. A life is measured by how it is lived for the sake of heaven. Do you understand me, Asher Lev? Yes, Reb. But there are those who do not understand this. I was quiet. There are those you love and who love you who do not accept this. Asher, to honor your father is one of the 10 commandments. Yes, Reb. I give you my blessings, Asher Lev, son of Reb Arya Lev. His right hand made a slight waving gesture. I got to my feet. I felt dazed and bewildered. Good night, Asher Lev. Good night, Reb. I went from the room and closed the heavy door behind me. It closed soundlessly, without effort. I started through the waiting room. The man in the beret stood up. He went quickly past me, opened the heavy door, stepped inside, and closed it. A vague odor trailed behind him, the odor of earth and oil paint. I saw a folded piece of paper on the chair I had occupied earlier. I stopped and picked it up and unfolded it. It was a pencil drawing, a photographic likeness of my face, made with an exquisite economy of line and without light and shade. The lower right-hand corner of the drawing contained a signature, Jacob Kahn. Below the signature was the date, January 10th, 1956. I sat down on the chair and stared at the drawing. Rav Dorochov was behind his desk, reading. He seemed not to know I was there. I folded the drawing and put it carefully into a pocket. I took out my small sketchbook and with a ballpoint pen, drew in one continuous line the face of Jacob Kahn. In the lower right-hand corner of the drawing, I signed the name Asher Lev, but below the signature, I wrote the date, 26/7th, 57/16. I left the drawing on the chair Jacob Kahn had occupied and went over to Rav Dorochov. Good night, I said. He looked up at me. Good night, Asher Lev. Mazel tov. He paused and added, may you bring joy to your parents. Thank you. I went from the room. I walked quickly down the stairs. I could hear voices. There were people still working in some of the offices on the street floor. I came out onto the stone porch. The night wind bathed my face. I sat on the rail of the porch and looked at the parkway. I sat there a very long time, remembering other times I had sat on the porch. A man came out of the building, stopped for a moment in the doorway, and walked over to me. I got off the rail. My name is Jacob Kahn, he said. He had a strong voice, and he spoke with a vague Russian accent. My name is Asher Lev, I said. We shook hands. He had a powerful grip. I felt my hand swallowed by his. Thank you for your drawing, he said. Thank you for yours. Do you have any idea at all what you are getting into? No. Become a carpenter. Become a shoemaker. I was quiet. Become a street cleaner. I did not respond. He sighed. Oh, you are crazy. We are all crazy. I know your father. He will become my enemy. I said nothing. Why should I make your father my enemy? Why? Tell me why. I did not respond. He sighed again. Reb is very clever. If it isn't me, it will be someone else. Yes? He prefers to take a chance with me. I was quiet. Of course, yes, the Reb is clever. I will watch you. We have a clever Reb. He drew his hand out of his coat pocket. This is yours. It was a sketchbook I had once filled for the Mosfia. Thank you. I put the sketchbook into my pocket. Now, he said, we begin. I do not like to start new relationships in the winter. It is not in my nature to do that. Also, there is a sculpture I must finish, and I will not have time for you now. You will call me in the middle of March. I am in the telephone book. He stopped and peered at me intently. You will call? Yes, I heard myself say. You understand that I am not what you call a Torah Jew. I am a great admirer of the Rebs. My father was a follower of the Reb's father, but I am not a religious Jew. You understand that? I understand. Good. Now, between today and the middle of March is a long time. You will do something for me in that time. You will take a journey to the Museum of Modern Art. You will go up the second floor, and you will look at a painting called Guernica by Picasso. You will study this painting. You will memorize this painting. You will do whatever you feel you have to do in order to master this painting. Then you will call me in March, and we will meet and talk and work. Do you understand? Yes. It is in my nature to be blunt and honest. I shall ask you a question. You are entering the world of the Goyim, Asher Lev. Do you know that? Yes. It is not only Goyim. It is Christian Goyim. Yes. You should better become a wagon driver, he said, using the Yiddish term. You should better become a water carrier. I said nothing. All right, he said. The Rebbe asked me to make it clear to you. I have made it clear to you. It is time to go home. We went together down the stairs and along the street. Tell me, he said. Have you been to the Parkway Museum? Yes. Have you seen my paintings? Yes. He waited. I didn't understand them, I said. I heard him sigh. He had his big hands deep in his pockets of his coat. He shrugged his shoulders. The night winds blew against his lined face. You are only 13 years old, he said. Yet it disturbs me to hear you say that. You will call me in March. Which way are you walking? Toward New York Avenue. I go the other way. Good night, Asher Lev. We shook hands. He went up the parkway. 8. This is Asher Lev, I said into the telephone. Hello, Asher Lev. It's the middle of March, I said. You saw Guernica? Yes. How many times did you see him? I told him. You studied Guernica? Yes. What else did you do? I drew each section of it at least twice. What else? I can draw from memory. What else? I studied the drawings he made before and after he painted it. Come to my studio this Sunday in the afternoon. He gave me an Upper Manhattan address. Can you come? I can come at 2:00. You will stay until dinner. We do not keep kosher. I will see you Sunday. Yes. Asher Lev. Yes. You are familiar with the story about the massacre of the innocents? No. Then you will read about it, please, for Sunday. You will find it in the New Testament, the book of Matthew, chapter 2, verse 16. I did not say anything. The New Testament, he said. The Bible of the Goyim. Yes. You will find it and read it. Yes, I said. You are familiar with the painting Massacre of the Innocents by Guido Reni? No. You will go to the library and find a reproduction of it and study it. If you cannot find Guido Reni's Massacre of the Innocents, then find Poussin's. But study one of them at least. Do you understand? Yes. I will see you Sunday at 2:00. Yes, goodbye. Goodbye, Asher Lev. I went to the library after school the next day and read the passage in the New Testament about King Herod ordering his soldiers to kill all the children of Bethlehem who were 2 years old and younger, after having been told that a child had years old and younger, having been told that the child had been born who would become the king of the Jews. It felt strange holding and reading a copy of the Christian Bible. I could not understand what the story had to do with Guernica. I found a small reproduction of Massacre of the Innocents by Guido Reni in a thick volume of the history of art. I looked at it closely. I had my reproduction of Guernica with me. I opened it and compared the two pictures. The faces of the women in the Reni painting intrigued me, especially that of the woman in the upper left of the picture. I found the Poussin woman in the upper left. I found the Poussin painting in another volume and studied it carefully. After a while, I closed the books and went out to the library. It was dark and cold. I took the subway home. My mother had a class on Thursday nights. Mrs. Rickover gave me supper. I went into my room and thought about Guernica. Mrs. Rakova came in to say she was leaving. I heard the apartment door close behind her. I was alone in the apartment. I sat at my desk and looked at the reproduction of Guernica, which I had put on the wall near my bed. The city of Guernica had been destroyed by the German Air Force in 1937 during the Spanish Civil War. Picasso had painted the mural for the Spanish Pavilion of International Exhibition in Paris that year. I knew that painting by heart and could draw it in my mind. I had dreamt about the bull and the horse. I had drawn the screaming, pain-filled faces of the women in my notebooks during class. I had put the anguished woman with the dead child into the back of an English exam book and had gotten it back with a written remark for the teacher about this being an English, not an art examination. He gave me a D on the test. I did not understand what Guernica had to do with the Christian Bible. I did not understand what it had to do with Massacre of the Innocents. I felt upset and uncomfortable at having read from the Christian Bible. I thought of my father. I thought of the Masfia. I wondered if the Reb really knew what Jacob Kahn was doing. I felt vaguely unclean. I had some homework. I started working on it quickly, perfunctorily. In the middle of the algebra problem, I found myself drawing from memory the head of one of the screaming women in Guido Reni's Massacre of the Innocents. I looked at the head, then I went back to the algebra problem. I heard the apartment door open and close. My mother was home. She came into my apartment room a moment later carrying a book. "There is no mail from your father," she asked. "No." "Did you have supper?" "Yes." "What's the matter?" "Nothing." "Are you all right? Do you have a fever?" "No." She glanced at the notebook with the algebra problem and the Reni head. "Her child was massacred," I said. She looked startled. I told her about the painting. Then I told her about the account of the massacre in the Christian Bible. I didn't like reading from that book. I saw where it had said Jews killed Jesus. I feel guilty reading the Bible of the Goyim. She gazed at the head of the notebook. In the notebook, and did not respond. "Why did he ask me to read that?" "When you see him Sunday, ask him. Do you want something to drink before going to sleep?" "No, Mama." "Have you had milk today?" "Yes." "I brought you this book. You said to me once that you liked the painting of Robert Henry. A professor in the art department gave me this for you to read." She put the book on my desk. "Good night, Asher. Don't stay up late." "You told the professor about me." I said my son is interested in art and likes Robert Henry. He told me to tell you to read this book. He also told me that Jacob Kahn is one of the greatest artists alive today. He worked with Picasso in Paris before the First World War. He was a little astonished that you're being taught by Jacob Kahn. She smiled wryly. Everyone seems astonished by that. Good night, Asher. I have a meeting early in the morning with the Reb staff. Kuschek's speech about Stalin also has everyone astonished. She went from the room. A moment later, I heard her moving about in the kitchen. I looked at the book she had put down on the desk. It was called The Art Spirit. I finished my homework quickly. In bed, I leafed idly through the book, reading passages at random. I liked this man. I liked the warmth and honest way he wrote. I lay in bed, leafing through the book, and I read. If you want to know how to do a thing, you must first have a complete desire to do that thing. Then go to kindred spirits, others who have wanted to do that thing, and study their ways and means. Learn from their success and failures and your quota. Thus, you may acquire from the experience of the race. And with this technical knowledge, you may go forward, expressing through the play of forms the music that is in you and which is very personal to you. I was not sure I understood what the phrase "the play of forms" meant. I continued reading, skipping the passages on techniques, which I was determined to read later. I read, he should be careful of the influence of those with whom he consorts, and he runs a great risk in becoming a member of a large society. The large bodies tend toward the leveling of individuality to a common consent, the forming and adherence to a creed. I read, you can do anything you want to do. What is rare in this actual wanting is to do a specific thing. Wanting is so much that you are practically blind to other things. that nothing else will satisfy you. I read, an artist has got to get acquainted with himself just as much as he can. It is no easy job, for it is not a present-day habit of humanity. I read, every great artist is a man who has freed himself from his family, his nation, his race. Every man who has shown the world the way to beauty, to true culture, has been a rebel, a universal without patriotism, without home, who has found his people everywhere. I read that again. Then I read, the artist should have a powerful will. He should be powerfully possessed by one idea. He should be intoxicated with the idea of the thing he wants to express. I began to read the book from the beginning slowly. I woke in the night and found the book in my hands and the reading light on. I turned off the light and I slept. In the morning, my mother said, you didn't sleep last night. It's a good book, Mama. Sit down and have your breakfast, Asher. Did you read the book? I looked through it quickly on the subway. Did you read what he said about an artist having to free himself? No, I don't remember that. I told it to her. I don't think I want to free myself that way, I said. In what way do you want to free yourself, Asher? I don't know. Eat your breakfast, she said softly, and I'll walk with you to school. I have a meeting to go to. There was no mail for my father that day, nor was there any mail from him the next day, which was Shabbat. My mother and I were in the living room late that Saturday night when the phone rang. I went to answer it. Asher Lev? It was Jacob Kahn. Yes? Bring all the drawings you made of Guernica. Bring other drawings too. Any you want. I'll bring them. You know how to travel? Yes. I will see you tomorrow at 2:00. My mother was at her desk reading. No, she said when I told her about the phone call. I think I ought to go with you the first time. I want to go alone. Asher, it's easier to get lost on the New York subway than it is to walk from here to yeshiva. But I insisted, and in the end she consented. I would go alone. I was to be back by 7:00. If I could not be back by 7, I was to call her. I stayed up late that night drawing sections of Guernica from memory. I spent a long time thinking about the faces of the women in the Reni and Poussin paintings and about the story of the massacre in the Christian Bible. My mother was still at her desk when I finally went to bed. I had an algebra test the next day, and I had forgotten to study for. I did not do well. I came out of the school building at 1:00 and walked quickly to the subway. It was a cold, cloudy March day. I had left my books at school and carried with me only the sketchbook filled with Guernica drawings and another sketchbook filled with drawings on my street. The subway was not crowded. I watched carefully for the stations where I needed the change trains. I noticed that the farther I traveled for Brooklyn, the more frequently I stared at it. In my dark blue winter coat and hat, and with my thin, pale features and red hair and dangling earlocks, I was not exactly a typical New Yorker. At one point in the journey, during a particularly long ride between stations, I opened my Guernica sketchbook and began leafing through the drawings. I saw the eyes and the round face of the elderly woman sitting next to me slowly grow wide with astonishment. I closed the sketchbook and looked out the window near my seat. We were in underground darkness outside the window, and I could see only my reflection. I spent the rest of my journey looking at my reflection in that dark window of the train. I got out at the 96th Street and Broadway stop. The wide street was crowded with people and traffic. I walked some blocks along Broadway and turned down a street toward the Hudson River. I found the address he had given me. It was an old gray brick loft building. I had to press a button outside the metal and glass front door. An old man with white hair and rheumy eyes opened the door. Yes, he said. He had a hoarse voice. Jacob Kahn, I said. He looked at me out of the roomy eyes, waiting. My name is Asher Lev. He nodded and stepped aside to let me in. He pointed to a book on a stand near the door. Sign, he said. And sign out when you leave. Building regulations. 5th floor for Mr. Kahn. He shuffled off towards the elevator. I followed. It was a slow, lumbering elevator. You one of them artist fellers? He asked. Which? They come in and out all the time. He peered at me closely out of his wet eyes. You don't look like one of them, he said. His hoarse voice had begun to remind me vaguely of Udall Krinsky. The elevator lurched to a halt. He pulled open the metal door. Mr. Kahn's place is the last door on the right. You need the elevator when you're through. You push the button here, and I'll come up. He pulled the metal door shut. The noisy whine of the elevator faded quickly. I walked down the corridor. It was dimly lighted and smelled vaguely of strong disinfectant cleanser. I stopped outside of the door of Jacob Kahn's studio and waited. I was sweating heavily, and I removed my hat and coat. I left my skull cap on. I heard voices inside. I recognized Jacob Kahn's voice. The other was the voice of a woman. I stood there hesitating. I stood there a long time. I looked at my wristwatch. It was a little past 2:00. I knocked softly on the door. The voices did not stop. I rang the bell. The voices ceased abruptly, and I heard footsteps. The doors opened and Jacob Kahn stood there, broad-shouldered, white-haired, wearing paint-smeared dungarees and a plaid shirt with the sleeves rolled up his elbows. A cigarette stuck out from beneath his walrus mustache. With the sleeves of his shirt rolled up, I could see the muscles of his arms. They were powerful arms, and they looked sculpted from stone. Come in, Asher Lev, he said. Come in, Anna. The prodigy is here. I felt his fingers grasp my arms. He took my coat and hat and tossed them somewhere. He pushed the door shut and a swift movement of his legs. Welcome, Asher Lev, he said, smiling down at me. It is good to see you here. Anna? Where are you? Ah, here, Anna. This is my Asher Lev. This is my Anna Schaefer. A woman had materialized suddenly from behind an enormous canvas. She was a medium height, matronly, with an oval face, sharp blue eyes, and short silvery hair. She wore a dark blue wool dress with a long necklace of white beads. She offered me her hand. I hesitated. Jacob Kahn moved adroitly towards her, took the offered hand in his left hand, lifted my hand in his right hand, and joined our two hands together. I felt the woman's palm and fingers against my skin. Her flesh was warm and dry. To the future, Jacob Kahn said solemnly, to the beginning of good things. We are assembled to celebrate our glory. If I paraphrase Apollinaire, Anna, it is not polite to stare. She was staring at my skull cap. I saw her eyes on the skull cap. Then I saw them moving slowly across my head and face to my side curls. They remained fixed on my side curls. Anna, Jacob Kahn said softly. He removed the cigarette from his mouth and flicked ashes onto the bare wooden floor. You did not tell me, the woman said to him, her eyes still on the side curls. You are a tricky old man. Are you upset with me that I did not tell you? Yes, I am upset. You are tricky and nasty. She did not sound upset. He is a prodigy, Anna, a prodigy and pious. Pious? She was still staring at me. The hair you are gapping at, the earlocks, Pious, she said. Pious and the skull cap and dark clothes and a prodigy. She looked at Jacob Kahn. You are a mean, tricky, and nasty old man. You are not being nice to an old woman, Jacob Kahn. On the contrary, my Anna, I am being very nice. I am being enormously nice. It is against my nature not to be nice. I introduced the boy to you without advanced preparations. All the disadvantages are his. All the advantages are yours. Could I be nicer? Yes, she said. You could bring me a drink. Then she turned to him and said something in French. He laughed, stepped carefully between two huge canvases, and disappeared. She turned back to me and smiled. Come over here with me, Yasherlev. Let us stand where there is more light. I followed behind her, treading carefully between the sculpture and easels and canvases and work tables that were the heavy traffic of that room. We stood near a wall of windows. The sky, filled with clouds that gave off gray light, seemed to border upon the windows. Beyond low rooftops and trees and a strip of highway, I could see the dark waters of the Hudson and the New Jersey shoreline. Let me look at you in the light, she said. I saw her blue eyes move across me. You have Chagall's pale face. Do you suffer fainting spells? No. I asked Jacob which of the three he thought you might become. The three? Mondellini, Suntin, Paskin. Paskin's name was originally Pinkas. Have you ever heard of those three? They were Jews. I've seen some of their paintings. They were dedicated people. You have not been beaten for drawing, have you? No. Sutin was severely beaten when he was young. When he was your age, I believe. You are 13, yes? He was quite severely beaten. Orthodox Jew. Jews do not care much for painting, I understand. You are what is called a Hasid? I nodded. Your parents do not mind your drawing and painting? I was quiet. She smiled faintly. May I ask you what your father does? I told her. She seemed surprised. How very interesting, she murmured. Why aren't you and your mother with your father in Europe? I told her that too, briefly. She looked at me intently. Then she looked out the window. Her eyes narrowed at the gray light. A barge moved slowly across the dark surface of water. Are you very religious? She asked quietly, still looking out the window. I'm an observant Jew. What does that mean specifically? I did not know what to say. She looked at me. Do you believe in a special way? Do you behave in a special way? I believe in God and the Torah He gave to the Jewish people. I pray 3 times a day. I eat only kosher food. I observe Shabbat, the Sabbath, and festivals and holy days. We only travel or work on the Sabbath and festivals and holy days. I believe the Reb is a gift to us by God to help us in our lives. I believe the Reb, she said. The Reb is the leader of our group. Ah, she murmured. Yes, the Reb. In Brooklyn, Jacob goes to visit all these years. Yes, go on. I believe it is man's task to make life holy. I believe Asherlev, she said softly. Asherlev, yes. Asherlev, you are entering the wrong world, she said. I was quiet. Asherlev, this world will destroy you. Art is not for people who want to make the world holy. You will be like a nun in a theater for burlesque. Do you understand me, Asherlev? If you want to make the world holy, well, stay in Brooklyn. I did not respond. There was a long silence. She stood peering gloomily out the window. He does not take students, you know. He has never had students in America. He had students in Europe. When Hitler came, the students were not kind. She was silent a moment. Then she looked at me. You will not hurt him, she said. Many have hurt him. He is like a monk. There are so many things he does not understand. I did not know what to say. I shook my head. She smiled. I am a possessive woman. I worry about my painters and sculptors. Where are your drawings, Asherlev? Jacob said you were bringing drawings. I handed her my sketchbook. She placed them on one of the work tables near the wall of the windows, opened one, and began slowly, very slowly, turning the pages. I watched her for a while. Her face was expressionless. She looked to be in her 60s, but I could not be certain. I wondered where Jacob Kahn was. I could not hear anything else in the studio. I watched her slowly turning the pages of the sketchbook. Then I moved away from her. She did not seem to notice me. I began to walk about the room. It was an enormous room. The walls were huge. High overhead was a large skylight set in a slanted roof. One of the windows was open. Gray light fell across bronze and stone and wood sculptures that stood scattered about the floor, and across huge canvases that leaned against the walls and smaller canvases set in easels. There was workable tables everywhere, some cluttered with tubes of paint and various sizes of brushes and small rollers, others laden with chisels and mallets. There was dust and paint on the floor and the walls, the work tables and easels. I thought I could even see flecks of paint on the ceiling overhead. I felt tiny, surrounded by the enormity of the room and the creations it contained. I heard someone behind me and turned. It was Anna Schaefer. I had the feeling she had been watching me for some time. I saw her looking at two huge bronze sculptures directly before me. I never weary of looking at those, she said. I plead with him every week to let me take them. There are museums that want them, but he parts with very little now. He says he wants, in his old age, to be surrounded by the work of his hands. Here are your sketchbooks. You are, bluntly put, magnificent. Ingrid would have been proud. You have a sense of line that can only be a gift. Do your people believe drawing is a gift from God? Even though they despise drawing, no doubt they believe it is a gift of Satan, yes? It is, in any event, your drawings of Guernica are astonishing. You even remember to put in the dripping of the paint. The others are drawings of your street, yes? They are quite exquisite. Who is this man whom you draw so often? Yudel Kritsky, I told her about him. And this woman, my mother. And this man, my father. She looked closely at the drawings of my father. She nodded slowly to herself. And this? Someone I dream about, an ancestor. Asher Lev, are you really 13 years old? Yes. Why not, she murmured. Why not? Goya was 12, Picasso was 9. Why not? It could happen in Brooklyn to a boy with bios. She looked around. Where is he, Jacob? Jacob, she called. Jacob! He came out of the dimness behind tall sculptures in the far corner of the studio. He carried a glass in his hand and was smoking a cigarette. He walked quickly towards us, smiling, and gave her the glass. You have become acquainted? He said to the two of us. Yes, Anna Schaefer said soberly. We have become acquainted. She sipped from the glass and left lipstick stain on its rim. Whenever you tell me, Jacob, anytime you feel he is ready. She sipped again from her glass. It will be 5 years, Jacob Kahn said to her. Millions of people could draw. Art is whether or not there is a scream in him wanting to get out in a special way. Or a laugh, she said. Picasso laughs too. Or a laugh, he said. Millions of people can draw. My uncle Yiskov had said that to me once. Millions of people can draw. When had he said that? Jacob Kahn turned to me and held out his hand, indicating the sketchbooks. I gave them to him, and he went through them quickly, then returned them to me. He looked at me in silence. He seemed sad. Listen to me, Asher Lev. You can become a portrait painter. You could paint calendars for motto companies. You could paint Rosh Hashanah greeting cards. What do you need this for? I did not say anything. Anna Schaefer sipped quietly from her drink, her eyes fixed upon Jacob Kahn. Do you understand what this is? Jacob Kahn asked me, his strong voice rising. Do you begin to understand what you are going to be doing to yourself? You understand now that what Picasso did, yes? Even Picasso, the pagan, had to do this. At times, there is no other way. Do you understand me, Asher Lev? This is not a toy. This is not a child scrawling on a wall. This is a tradition. It is a religion, Asher Lev. You are entering a religion called painting. It has its fanatics and its rebels, and I will force you to master it. Do you hear me? No one will listen to what you have to say unless you are convinced you have mastered it. Only one who has mastered a tradition has a right to attempt to add it to or to rebel against it. Do you understand me, Asherlev? I nodded slowly. Asherlev, it is a tradition of Goyim and pagans. Its values are Goyish and pagan. Its concepts are Goyish and pagan. Its way of life is Goyish and pagan. In the entire history of European art, there has not been a single religious Jew who was a great painter. Think carefully of what you are doing before you make your decision. I say this not only for the Reb, but for myself as well. I do not want to spend time with you, Asherlev, and then have you tell me you made a mistake. Do you understand? Jacob, the woman said softly, you are frightening the boy. It is my intention to frighten him out of his wits. I want him to go back to Brooklyn and remain a nice Jewish boy. What does he need this for, Anna? What did you need it for, Jacob? I know what I went through, he said. Excuse me a moment, Asher, the woman said to me. She took Jacob Kahn's arm. They moved off towards the window. I stood alone amidst the sculptures and canvases. I could hear them talking softly, but I could not make out the words. I stood there surrounded by lines and shapes in metal and stone. Tall, poignant sculptures of mothers and children, exquisite female hands, delicately turning torsos of men and women. Black stone fists, jutting like sudden screams from unpolished stone bases. Entwined lovers, huge birds, as in a fantasist dream, beasts from a private mythology, and shapes without representational form, exquisitely molded liquid motion in polished bronze. None of the canvases contained representational forms. They shimmered and vibrated with subtle harmonies and sudden complementaries, textured with sand and plaster, and in one huge canvas with small slivers of blue glass embedded in an impasto of swirling orange. Wow, they were powerful paintings of color and texture. His subject was color and texture, and I felt their sensuousness move against me, and I was uncomfortable and a little afraid. I closed my eyes. I opened my eyes, and there was a flood of color again, a surge of sensuous power, raw, elemental, as when lengthy darkness is abruptly replaced by a sudden pouring in of sunlight. I had seen his canvases in the museum. They had not affected me this way. None of them had had this quality of raw sensuousness. An easel stood a few feet away to my left. There was a painting on it, similar to but smaller in size than the others. I looked at it closely and saw it was dry. I removed it and put it against the edge of an untouched canvas. A roll of small white stretched canvases stood against the wall. I picked up a canvas and put it on the easel. There were tubes of oil colors on the adjoining table, along with brushes and turpentine. I painted hands and a face onto the canvas. I worked swiftly, doing the mouth and eyes and mustache and hair, then moving colors through the space behind the head. Set back from the head, I painted an easel with a canvas and a face on the canvas. I made the face pale and the earlocks red. I omitted painting pupils in the eyes. The eyes speared blankly for the canvas, within the canvas. I put the brushes on the table and stepped back and moved heavily into Jacob Kahn. I felt his powerful hands on my shoulders, holding me so I would not fall. I felt him holding me there, almost in an embrace. Then he released me. He was looking at the canvas. Anna has scolded me severely for my bluntness, he said quietly, looking at the canvas. It is in my nature to be blunt. He put his large hands into the pockets of his dungarees and stood very straight, still looking at the canvas. I do not know what to say to you, Asherlev. I am moved by your trust, but you see better at 13 than I did at 18. When you are 18, Perhaps you will see better than I did at 25. At 25, you had been through 2 pilgrims, the woman said to him. I looked at her. The eye inside a man is not improved by pilgrims. You underestimate yourself, Jacob. No, he said. I know about eyes. I have lived and worked with some of the best eyes of our century. You have seen the drawings of his street. That is an eye drawing, Anna. Hands alone do not draw this way. First, you frighten him too much. Now you praise him too much. You are an impossible man, Jacob Khan. No, he said. It is not Jacob Khan who is impossible. He turned abruptly to me. Listen, Asher Lev, I cannot teach you too much more about how to see. I will teach you some tricks. Then you will throw the tricks away and invent your own. I will teach you composition. I will teach you how to create tension. I will teach you how to handle range and color and line. You draw with too much love. No man can love as much as you and survive as an artist. You will become sentimental. And sentimentalism is death to art. Do you understand what I am saying? No, of course not. How could you understand that? You are 13 years old. I must remember that you are only 13 years old. Jacob, the woman said, I must go. Wait, I want you to hear what I have to say. I will miss my flight. You will not miss your flight. It is not yet 4:00. Listen to what I say to the boy. He will be as much yours as mine. He turned to me. Asher Lev, I will give you 5 years of my time. If at the end of those 5 years you are not ready for Anna, you are finished and it will have all been a waste. If, however, you are ready for Anna, I will make suggestions as to how we are to proceed. I want you to understand something. It is not in my nature to begin a relationship with a lie. I am not doing this as a favor to the Reb. I have respect for the Reb, but I have a passion for my art. The Reb asked me to guide you and to keep you from evil ways. Those were his words. I do not know what evil is when it comes to art. I only know what is good art and what is bad art. Those were my words to the Reb. The Reb trusts me and will rely on my honest heart. Those were the Reb's answering words to my remarks. I will not teach you on the basis of that trust. Artists should not be trusted. If an artist is not deceitful every so often, it is the cause of his art. In the cause of his art, then he is a poor artist. Those were my remarks to the Reb. Still, he trusts me. So be it. He trusts me. But if it is of no real consequence to me whether the Reb does or does not trust me, I am taking you on not as a favor to the Reb, but because you have greatness. I am selfish. All artists are selfish and self-centered. I am not taking you on because I will derive pleasure in molding your greatness, just as I derive pleasure. I am taking you on because I will derive pleasure in molding your greatness, just as I derive pleasure in molding clay and marble. For 5 years, I will sculpt you and bring out of you what is already inside of you. I will work with your faults and flaws and genius, as Michelangelo works with the flaws and power of marble. That became in David. Are you listening to me, Asher Lev? Do you hear me, Anna? I am 72 years old. I do not have 5 years to give anything that is less than a marble for David. He looked at the woman. Do you have anything you wish to say to me, Anna? Yes, the woman said. I have a plane to catch in London. Go catch your plane. Give Oscar my wishes. Tell him I will be in London in June for his retrospective. Tell him prune juice is good for old age if used in moderation. You are an impossible old man, the woman said. Do not let him frighten you, Asher Lev. I have a stake in you. Your art will one day make you famous, and me and you rich. You are already rich, Jacob Khan said. It can never hurt to become richer. Go catch your plane. There are men here with work to do. I wish you luck, Asher Lev. Everything else you already have. She offered me her hand. I took it without hesitation. Goodbye, Asher Lev. Her grip was warm and firm. Jacob Kahn took her to the door. They talked quietly for a moment. Then he opened the door for her and walked with her along the hallway to the elevator. They continued to talk quietly. The elevator came and she stepped inside. Then she was gone and Jacob Kahn was back in the studio. He closed the door and softly behind him and stood there, his hands jammed into his dungaree pockets, looking at me. She is a great woman, he said quietly. She found me in Paris when I was starving. You are fortunate. I do not think you will ever starve. He moved away from the door and come slowly towards me. You have a gift, Asher Lev. You have a responsibility. He stopped in front of me. Do you know what that responsibility is? I did not say anything. Tell me what you think that responsibility is, he said. I was quiet. I did not know what to say. Do you feel you are responsible to anyone, to anything? To my people, I said hesitantly. What people? To Jews. To Jews, he echoed. Why do you think you are responsible to Jews? All Jews are responsible for one another, I said, quoting the statement from the Talmud. My father had years ago quoted to me. As an artist, you are responsible to Jews. He seemed angry. Listen to me, Asher Lev. As an artist, you are responsible to no one and to nothing, except to yourself and to the truth as you see it. Do you understand? An artist is responsible to his art. Anything else is propaganda. Anything else is what the communists in Russia call art. I will teach you responsibility to art. Let your Ladover Hasidim teach you responsibility to Jews. Do you understand? Yes, I think you understand. You did not do what you did to your family without understanding that. It is not weakness to feel guilty at having done it, but the guilt should not interfere with your art. Use the guilt to make better art. Now come with me to this canvas. I'm going to teach you that painting is not storytelling. If you want to tell stories, become either an illustrator or a writer. If you want to become a painter, you will learn to use line and color and shape and texture to create paintings, not stories. Now look at this canvas and tell me what you see. We spent the rest of the afternoon talking about line and color and shape and texture. Then he watched me make a pen and ink drawing of a little boy and girl walking hand in hand along my street. Then I watched him make a pen and ink drawing of a row of low houses around a small cobblestone square. One of the houses was very dilapidated. Narrow winding streets led away from the square. There were trees and benches in the square and old dark metal lampposts. This is my street, he said. This is called Place Émile Godot. When I lived in this old building here, the street used to be called Rue Ravignan. It may still be called that today. I have not been back in a very long time. Do you see this old building? We called it Bateau Laveur. Max Jacob named it. You have never heard of Max Jacob. He was a poet. He was a Jew who became a Catholic out of conviction. But the Nazis killed him anyway. Picasso lived here. God, how poor we were and how hard we worked. Oh, we changed the eyes of the world. This is my street, Asher Lev. The street where I was born does not exist. It is a park now in Kiev, but this street is where I was truly born. He was silent a long time. His shoulders bowed as he sat over the drawing. The things we talk about, he murmured. Who will ever know of the things we talked about? He was silent again. Then he raised his head and looked at me, his eyes very narrow. I wondered a long time who would ever know the things we talked about. He was silent once again. He resumed drawing. He drew a room with a window facing a sloping hill and rooftops. He drew a short man painting strange faces and figures onto a huge canvas. He drew a tall man painting square and rectangular objects onto a small canvas. He drew himself, carving sharp wedges into a block of stone. He seemed lost in his drawings. I sat and I watched him work. His huge hands grasped the pen and gave life to lines that flowed from it. I saw his street alive. I saw its shops, its cafes, its poverty, its bitter winters, its artists. I do not remember how many drawings of that street he made that day. But before he was done, I felt the street as part of my own parkway. Its trees and benches and lampposts, part of what I saw each day as I gazed through the window of my living room onto the world I wanted to create anew with line and color and shape. Later, as we stood at the door, he said to me, "You will come every Sunday afternoon, yes? We will work and talk. Can you come next Sunday afternoon?" I told him I could not come because next Sunday was 2 days before Passover and my father would be home. I would not want to come until my father left. "Your father knows about us, Asher." I did not want to hurt my father unnecessarily, I said. I would wait until he left. "I understand, but I am disappointed. You will bring more drawings with you next time, and bring an oil painting, a new painting, one you will make between now and next time. Remember what we talked about. Do not paint me a story. Paint me a painting. Goodbye, Asher Lev. Have a good Pesach." I walked away the dim, empty corridor to the elevator. The building seemed to echo faintly. A short man painting a huge canvas, and nearby, a tall man painting a small canvas. I heard the whine of the elevator. Bateau Lever, laundry boat. Like the laundry boats on the Seine. It was built on the side of hills, and you came in on the street floor, as you would onto the deck of a ship, and went down its dark corridors and stairway to the rooms below. Named by Max Jacob, a Jew who became a Catholic and died as a Jew. The elevator door opened. I stepped inside. The door closed. I felt the elevator starting down. "You've been there a long time," the old man said, with the rheumy eyes said. I barely heard him. 4 hours, he said in a hoarse voice. I looked at my watch. It was almost 6 o'clock. "You studying to be a painter?" I nodded. He looked at me closely and shook his head. The elevator stopped. He opened the door. "Sign out in the book there," he said, and shuffled off towards a room near the end of the elevator corridor. I put 552 in one column next to my name. I noticed the signature directly above mine, Anna Schaefer. I stared at it for a moment. Then I put on my hat and coat and came out of the building. The door closed shut behind me. A cold wind blew through the street. I stood alongside the metal and glass window of the building and prayed the afternoon service. Then I took the subway home. I was back a few minutes before 7. The apartment was dark. On the kitchen table, I found a note from my mother. My supper was on a plate in the refrigerator. My mother was at the emergency meeting with the Reb staff. She did not know when she would be back. I ate supper alone in the silent apartment. Then I went to the living room and looked out the window to the street. "This is my street," I heard Jacob Kahn say. "This street is where I was truly born." I stood at the window and stared out the trees and lampposts and rushing cars. I saw rushing cars and small shops and outdoor cafes and old lampposts. I saw cobblestone and the cement of our sidewalk. I saw the wide parkway and the benches. I saw people walking beneath the bare trees. I saw my mother walking beneath the bare trees. She was walking very quickly. Coming towards the house, she looked at me and saw me in the window and made a gesture of greeting. I was at the door to the apartment when she came up the elevator. I helped her take off her coat. She was pale. I followed her into the kitchen. She put the kettle on the stove. "How was your day with Jacob Kahn?" she asked. "Very good, Mama." "Mama, will you be able to learn a lot from him?" "Yes." "Mama, is anything wrong?" "Yes," she said. "Your father will not be home for Pesach." I stared at her. "No one knows where your father is," she said. "Papa isn't in Europe?" No one knows. The Reb knows. The Reb told me to have faith in the Ribbeno Shel Halom. The Reb doesn't know where Papa is. The Reb still didn't tell me whether he does or doesn't know. He only told me to have faith in the Ribbeno Shel Halom. Papa's in Russia, I said. My mother said nothing. He's in Russia, I said, feeling cold with horror. My mother did not respond. Her face was sallow. Her hands trembled faintly as she poured boiling water from the kettle into a cup. Do you have homework? Yes. Go do your homework, Asher. I have to prepare for my classes tomorrow. When will Papa be home? No one knows. He won't be home until Rosh Hashanah? No one knows. Mama, go do your homework, Asher. Please, please. I left her sitting at the table over her cup of coffee. I could not do my homework. I lay in my bed and thought of my father in Russia. I saw him at secret meetings of Ladover Hasidim, conveying the Reb's words of hope and faith. The Reb remembers you. I kept hearing him say, the Reb blesses you. The Reb asks you not to forget the master of the universe. The Reb has you always in his mind and heart. I saw him journeying through the small mud-caked towns and large stone and steel cities, meeting 2 Hasidim here, 10 Hasidim there, teaching, praying, urging that faith not be abandoned, despite the dark and awesome power of Sitra Achra. I saw him establishing yeshivos in a basement and cellars. I saw him watching by the thousands eyes of secret police. I saw him arrested and beaten and said to. I slept and had horror-filled dreams. The next morning, my mother looked as if she had not slept at all. We heard nothing more about my father the rest of that week. Everyone in school seemed to know he was missing, though no one said anything openly to me. Teachers left me alone. Classmates became kind. The mashpia called me into his office and talked to me about the need to have faith in the Ribbeno Shel Halom. Mrs. Rakova moved about the apartment in gentle silence. My uncle Yitzkov invited us to his Seder, and my mother accepted. Yudel Krinsky sighed repeatedly as he filled small boxes with tubes of oil colors I had bought. Then told me he was adding 3 brushes at no cost. A Pesach gift, he said in his hoarse voice. He seemed deeply sad and fearful. I spent late Thursday afternoon in the library looking at a color reproduction of Michelangelo's David. The next Sunday afternoon, I came out of my school and walked to the subway and journeyed again to Jacob Kahn.